gosh, I've put on weight. I'm not training because I'm not sleeping. I remember feeling quite disheartened about it and thinking, am I about to wave the white flag? Which I never in my life have ever thought that. What the is going on here? Oh my God.
Can I buy you a drink and get your number? And I'm like, dude, you're like 37.
Michelle Bridges, welcome back to the Stellar Podcast.
Thank you for having me. I always love coming in and chatting with you. It always feels like a really easy, interesting and natural conversation. So thanks for having me.
Well, you know, it feels like it really wasn't that long since you and I last sat down, had a little chat here with these microphones in front of us. But actually, it was September 2023, which is almost 2 years ago. Crazy. I know that's a cliche, like how quickly did it go? But
a lot's happened.
A lot has happened. So we do have a lot to talk about in today's episode, is something to talk about. But I actually want to start by saying, among all the water under the bridge the last 2 years, is that you have written a new book, The Perimenopause Method, the only menopause guide you'll ever need. Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm really proud of it. It's a team effort, but it's something that I've been researching for, I would easily say probably close to 4 years. I was doing the legwork when I was still living in the Southern Highlands on this book. I actually started kind of doing the research during COVID. Do you know, Sarah, I didn't even know if I had another book in me. This is my 18th book.
18.
I know, it's like nuts. I just didn't think I did. And then this conversation that just authentically turned up, and I will go into how it kind of landed in my two worlds. One was in my business world and one was in my personal world, and then both those worlds collided. And this is kind of what's come from it. It's given me a real lease on life again, I feel. Like I've leaned into something that I didn't think I was ever going to lean into, which has been something I always say to my ladies, you know, get a little uncomfortable, get a little bit in a position that doesn't feel quite, you know, like it's easy. And it wasn't. And that's kind of ignited a real passion inside of me.
That's great, because when we're in the midst of that discomfort, we don't want it. I mean, who does? But to know that is the gateway to a whole new lease of creativity and energy is fantastic.
100%. And I say this, again, very genuinely, particularly for women in my age group. This is a time, and you'll hear it time and time again, where there will be conversations around, am I invisible? Or is this a time for me to pivot? Or is it time for reinvention? Or, you know, where am I going in this next chapter? That it can actually be an exciting time. And I've just kind of organically and authentically turned into this pathway, and I'm genuinely loving it. And I guess it's because there's just so many women out there that have so many questions, and I couldn't find the answers for 4 years ago, which is how this whole thing just kind of it blew up.
Absolutely.
And can I just say it's blown up?
It's really blown up, and I want to unpack a lot of that with you in our conversation today, Michelle. The book opens with you writing, one afternoon in late 2020, I walked out of my GP's office with a script in my hand for an antidepressant. I wasn't depressed. I was perimenopausal. Can you take us back to that moment?
That day that I came out of my GP, and I was living in the Southern Highlands, so in a new area. I was living on a farm, so it was a very isolated situation, which, you know, for COVID was brilliant. I was living in a park, you know, we could walk all around our property. We had space, so we were very, very blessed. But little did I know I was perimenopausal, and little did I know that, you know, in hindsight, probably one of the worst things I could have done was go and isolate myself in that time frame. But to that moment in the car, I didn't have a clue what was wrong with me, and I knew there was something not quite right. I know my body very well, I know my mindset very well, and just couldn't quite put my finger on what was up, you know. And it was very easy to explain away some of the symptoms that I had, like most of us, because you can easily explain it away through stress or through, you know, a global pandemic, or a relationship breakdown, or, you know, just the general cost of living, whatever you want to put it down to. You can always put it down to something. And I'd been back and forth to this doctor a couple of times, and I said, I'm telling you right now, I swear I'm not a hypochondriac, but I've been in your office now probably 4 times in a month, trying to what's going on. I had a few little heart palpitations. Now, I intrinsically know that my heart is as strong as Phar Lap, but I'm like, maybe there's something wrong. Maybe it was to do with the vaccine that I'd had. And, I was trying to link it all up. I had this incredibly gnawing, like a chainsaw, hip pain that was not only affecting me during the day when I was walking, but it was also keeping me well awake at night. I was also being kept awake at night with what I thought I had an internet problem. Do you remember the old dial-up sound, the internet?
Yes.
I had that ringing in my ears all night long.
What, literally you could hear it?
Which is a symptom, which I didn't know. And I was like, why can I hear this? As soon as I put the lights out, it'd start. And then, of course, I would be waking up hot, and I never had a hot flash, thank God, because, I know they're debilitating. They sounded really tough to get through. So I've never had that, and whoever did the PR around hot flashes, well done, because that's all everybody ever thinks of. I've never had one in my life, and I know plenty of ladies that haven't either. I know a lot that have. But I was waking up hot and sweaty at night, in the middle of the night, and then I couldn't get back to sleep. And then, of course, the knock-on effect of a really shit night's sleep, and then that makes you not have a great day. And then I had a little bit of anxiety, which I'd never had before. Now, I classified none of that as really debilitating, but I knew that there was something not quite right. But when I've now spoken to, I've interviewed probably upwards of 20 specialists, they all look at me and say, no, that was debilitating. That was messing up your sleep. That was messing up your training. You were walking with a limp. You were feeling anxious. You had what you thought were heart pain. Like, there was a few things that, Michelle, that wasn't just you were able to brush it off, which I was doing in a way, but also trying to figure it out. And I had my bloods done, which I now know that, blood tests isn't going to really show anything for perimenopause because it's your hormones change 678 times in one day. So that's not going to show you anything. You've got to go by your symptoms. But I did do my bloods with my doc, and everything came back normal, except my LDL, my bad cholesterol, had risen, which I couldn't put my finger on that. My diet's pretty much been the same forever. But my good cholesterol was like stratospheric, and she's like, God, what do you eat? Like, that's so good. I'm not going to worry about this too much. That's classic, terms, keep an eye on it. But another thing that had come in, which was my vitamin D, was not low, it was deficient. Like, I was through the floor in vitamin D. Now, I didn't know then, but I know now that those are two fairly strong milestones to kind of say that you could potentially be in perimenopause. Neither of us knew. And, she said, you're going, we're all going through a bit of a rough moment with the pandemic, and you've had, your relationship has ended, and you've got a 4-year-old, and you're single parenting, and blah, 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 blah. I think that you should go on this script. And I took it and sat in the car, and I was really sat on my ass for like probably a good 10 minutes, just staring out the window thinking, is this really where I'm at? Like, no, I'm a bit flat, but am I depressed? And I've got no judgment against the use of antidepressants. I think they work wonders for many, many women and men. But I found it quite confronting. And
you obviously instinctively felt that that wasn't quite what your problem was, because you were correct in assuming that actually wasn't about depression. It was actually something else that was going on.
Yeah, look, and I remember
symptoms.
saying to my friend one day when I was living there, I said to him, my bestie, I feel like there's this weird sense of impending doom, or that something bad's going to happen. So there was some kind of different thinking that I was experiencing for the first time in my life. But I just didn't think I wanted to go down the path of taking drugs yet. Like, I don't know. There was something that was blocking me. Now, that was all happening in my private life. And then over here in my business world, we'd had probably for several years women coming at us saying, please do something for menopause. Please, please, please. Your programs are great. I've used them for years, but you need to do something for that. And I remember going, yeah, I'll get onto that. And also at the same time in the back of my mind, if I'm honest, do I want to be a woman in the fitness industry admitting to, or talking about menopause, which clearly I had no clue about at the time. I thought I did, but I had no clue. And I considered myself not anywhere near that anyway. But I gave myself a good talking to and said, Michelle, you've always championed women and empowered women. So by not saying anything, you're perpetuating the ageism, media, shame, taboo, patriarchy, if you like, around this topic. So, no, let's lean into this and have a thought, not thinking I was anywhere near it, right? So I'm doing all this research. I remember walking through Bondi Junction, listening to a podcast of Dr. Mary Claire Harver, and she was saying every single patient that walks in, I'm about a year and a half into research now, maybe a year, every single patient that walks in to my office, and that's all she sees is menopausal women or perimenopausal women. Their LDL, bad cholesterol is up for no reason, and their vitamin D is deficient. And I stopped. I thought, shit. And I had a flashback of all the stuff that I'd just been reading. I thought, far out. I'm a perimenopausal woman. And I never really even knew what that word was when I first started the work. I didn't even know that word existed in the English language.
How did you feel in that moment? Was it relief, as in I've got a name for it, or was it shock, as in I didn't think that would be me, I'm not ready for that?
All of it and everything.
All of the above.
And I rang my girl, Steph, that is part of my team in 12WBT, and we were all on board. We're all in research trying to get ready for the first program we launched, which was the Menopause Method. I rang her and I said, I'm perimenopausal. She's like, oh my God. I said, I know it. I just know, it was almost like all of these conversations and all of this literature and everything that I'd been listening to and talking about, it all just went ching, 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 bing. And I was like, oh my God. And so that is the moment that I just put my foot down. I was like, right, we've got to get this stuff done. And when we did the Menopause Method and we put that out to market, as soon as we put it to market, we were all looking at each other going, this topic, it's like an iceberg. It's way bigger than just one program. So we then had to launch into the next program, which we did, which is the Perimenopause Method. And then, of course, while I'm doing all of that, I'm listening to all these incredible women that I'm interviewing for both the programs, and I'm thinking, God, if a woman doesn't do these programs, they're going to miss all of these incredible ladies that I've interviewed. They're going to miss all of this gold. And for the first time in my life, I said, and I'd always said, I'm never going to do this. I said, I'm going to do a podcast. And I'd never wanted to do a podcast. Not interesting for me at all. But I just realized now there was all this incredible gold that most women didn't even know. And so fast forward, 4 years. I mean, I could tell you some stories. Just one of them, which makes me so proud of the fact that I'm sitting here talking to you, is when I first started talking about this. No one wanted to talk to me.
That's right. I mean,
I couldn't get an interview anywhere about it.
And this is like as recently as you say, 4 years ago. 3-4 years ago.
I had a lady that I engaged. I've worked with her many years with 12WBT, and she's in publicity. And I said, look, I was like gagging to tell everyone about all this stuff that I'd found out. And she's like, I can't really see that on morning's breakfast shows. And I'm like, but why? She's like, Michelle. I'm like, but it's 50% of the population and half the staff are females. And one of the lead anchors is a woman. Like, what? I found it a little bit frustrating, I'm not going to lie. But slowly and surely it started to change. I mean, to the point, fast forward to like even just last year, 2024, I had a radio interview with Triple M. And the blokes all wanted to know about their partners and their wives. So I thought, well, haven't things changed? And in such a short period of time,
Rapid
which is
fire change.
Fabulous.
When you were saying that you had never thought before about doing a podcast, or it was something that you didn't want to do, it was this issue that ignited that passion in you. And
Yes.
that reservation that you had about going public with your own story, once you'd identified what was going on.
And you asked me before, how did I feel? I felt validated, but I felt pissed off as well.
What did you feel pissed off about?
That I wasn't told, that no one informed me about this, that I was pissed off. I felt let down by the medical system. Like, how could someone not know about this? I'm in the health and wellness industry, but I'm not a doctor. I'm kicking myself at the same time, thinking I should have known about this. But like, how come I didn't know about this? How is it that it's 2020, whatever it was, 2021 maybe by this stage, and I had never heard of the word perimenopause?
I was going to ask you exactly that, because you've given us that great insight into the moment that the penny dropped for you. You're walking through a big shopping centre in Sydney, listening to a podcast, and that is the moment that everything
I'll never
makes
forget
sense.
it.
You had been consulting doctors. You had symptoms that ran all the way from very concerning and troubling, like that effect on your mental health, waking up in the middle of the night, hearing that old style internet, through to the physical symptoms that you've discussed, from heart palpitation. I mean, this is serious
I mean, I was
stuff.
a 48, 49-year-old woman, and you would think that one of the first conversations that would have been is, well, you might be perimenopausal or menopausal, but it just was never even brought up on conversation.
You would think that the fact that somebody like you, who's been in touch with your body, understands these things, has done all this research, going into doctors, speaking about it candidly, that you would have found out from a medical professional in person during an official consultation, rather than via media, via a podcast.
Yeah.
I would think some people might think, oh, sure, if that was like 10, 20 years ago. As he said, how could this still be happening now? I'm not going to ask you to speak for the medical profession, but I'd be curious to know anecdotally, given the conversation that women like yourself have really shifted that dial so quickly, as we've talked about, the fact that even getting on Triple M to talk about these things in 2025. What impact do you think that might be having, as we speak, on the medical community? You would hope that
I know
women,
already.
What is it?
Well, like I said, because of my programs and because of my podcast, I've had the absolute fortune to interview some of the most incredible women in Australia that really know their shit about this stuff. Like, they're freaking cool. I mean, who would have thought that I would now be fangirling doctors and GPs? Like, I follow them on Instagram. It's ridiculous. Like, oh, you got to follow her. She's great. So these interviews have just been so powerful to me, and I can hand on heart tell you that every single one of those women that I interviewed all said the same thing. All of them said they got minimal to no training in this topic of women's health.
Yeah.
It just didn't happen. Or if they were fortunate enough to get some, it'd be like 8 hours out of a six-year university degree. So it's not in the curriculum. So it's not in any point am I, throwing shade on GPs out there. It's just that they haven't been taught.
It's the system.
It's the system.
And the gap in the system.
Correct.
And is that changing?
That is changing now. There's government reforms that are occurring, and a lot of them have been pushed by the likes of some what I call the rock stars of the menopause scene, which doctors like Dr. Kerry Cashel, Dr. Jen Hacker-Pearson, that went into government and have put forward, tabled, issues that need to be addressed in women's health. Unfortunately, I didn't realise, I just didn't know, but now that I have been researching, women's health has just never been a part of research ever. It's always been on men, and the reason I understand is because women have cycles, so they throw the stats, they throw the science. So instead, all medical research has just been done on men. what are we, small men with boobs? It doesn't.
Only
We're so different
50%
beasts.
of the population.
We're completely different.
Maybe let's do some pivoting and tailoring as to how we collect data and
So
do research.
historically, we haven't had good, solid women's health medical research for forever.
Michelle, if I can take you back to that moment, as you said, you're sitting in the car, just really frozen on the spot, trying to process what happened. And yes, it was 2020. There was, as a doctor had said to you, global pandemic. As you've said, you recently separated, adjusting to life as a single mum. I mean, it was a huge time. You and I had obviously spoken at that time. There'd been the drink driving charge. I mean, that was a really difficult time in your life and your career. There'd be a lot of reasons that you would be thinking, well, it's this, it's that. For women that are listening and have got a lot going on in their lives, are picking up your book, what would you say if they think, well, of course I'm tired, but then again I am, working 14 hours a day. Yes, I feel a bit flat, but I recently lost my job. Because for a lot of us there are reasons, as I'm sure for you, there's extenuating circumstances and we can tell ourselves it's something else. What would your message be in terms of listening to that voice that clearly was in the back of your mind, even back then in 2020, telling you, this is something else?
Well, I think it's the messages are very different now. So there's a lot more discussion around perimenopause and menopause for a start. So I think a lot of women are already clocking it. But I think the best thing you can do is to start tracking your symptoms, because that's the only way you're kind of going to figure out what's happening for you, is through your understanding, what's happening, across the month, across a couple of months, with your periods, your cycle, what's happening with your sleep patterns, what's happening with your mental health. And this is all really great data collection, because when you walk into your GP, you've kind of done half the job for them, which is really important. The other thing too is, don't forget that to be not only advocating for yourself, but also even taking someone into your GP. I've spoken to so many GPs that said, when someone brings their mate in, or their husband in, or their best friend in, I actually think that's great, and also gets me sitting up on my toes and thinking, I better do a good job here, because they've brought someone in as a second set of ears.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Yeah, so you can do that, but certainly tracking those symptoms is going to be the best way that you can start to uncover what's happening for you. And I want to really preface this too by saying, we've got estrogen receptors in every single cell of our body. They're everywhere, very rich ones in our brains, which is why a lot of neurological symptoms will turn up off the bat first. But they're everywhere, which is why you get, and you'll see it in my book, you get all these whacked out different symptoms that can occur because you've got estrogen receptors everywhere. So it can be skin, it can be brain, it can be gut, it can be frozen shoulder, it can be tinnitus, it can be burning mouth, it can be urinary tract infections, it can be, there's just a long list, which doesn't sound great, but I have got a happy ending. I will, before we finish today, I will give you a happy ending. So those symptoms are so wacky because you've got estrogen receptors in every single part of your body. So making sure that you're kind of tracking the symptoms, but then also not just blaming perimenopause and menopause on everything. And I hear this a lot from my GPs. I'll say that again. I just turned that off. I thought I had that off. That's okay. I hear this a lot from my GPs, is it's still important to dig in to a symptom just in case there's something more underlying. That it's very easy to brush it off to all of these wacky symptoms, but yeah, just making sure that you really do the due diligence. Like if you are having heart palpitations, like I got myself hooked up and went through all the processes of making sure that I didn't actually have some kind of abnormal heartbeat or whatever, whether it is something that's to do with your thyroid, or whether it's something else that's sitting underneath that symptom that's not perimenopause. But certainly, there's about upwards of 70 to 75 symptoms that's been recorded.
I want to ask you in a moment about some of the ways that it's changed, putting boundaries around your life, for instance. But before I ask about that, this I'm going to call it a makeover that menopause and perimenopause has had in the last couple of years. And the fact that the stigma has been so dramatically reduced, as you say, not completely gone away. I'd love to ask about the ageism side of it, because women like yourself globally, we've got all sorts of people like Gwyneth Paltrow talking about it, Naomi Watts, for instance. It's
Halle Berry.
Halle Berry.
Fantastic.
Now, again, I'll make the disclaimer, we're not saying everyone needs to look like Michelle Bridges or Gwyneth Paltrow or Halle Berry, but the fact that we have women openly talking about it and reducing the stigma does then help other women go, oh, okay, so it's not just me, and everyone's not going to go, oh, you're an old, quote unquote, shriveled up, irrelevant crone, go away. Wanted to ask you about the reaction to that ageist aspect of this, because that would definitely have been a factor before, I'm sure, with women on TV, women in radio, women in media, high-profile women, actors. I know Naomi Watts said she was advised not to talk about it.
Yes, she no doubt would have been probably 5 or 6 years ago.
That's right. So how's that shifting the dial? It feels like it is. I mean, you're 54 and you've always been somebody that I think has been a real role model for living your best life, feeling your best, looking your best at each age. And that's part of this conversation, isn't it? That you feel, again, from the outside, but is it a bit more complicated than that? Are there still some reservations around the ageist aspect of it?
Look, I think it's a reality that, we're kind of taught from a very young age that, everything is anti-aging, or everything. So, and I do feel the needle is shifting on that quite substantially, but it's systemic. It's so ingrained in us. It's so ingrained. And look, when you say, look like Michelle Bridges, I remember looking in the mirror going, what the is going on here? Oh my God, I really saw changes in my body, which for probably one of the first times in my life, I suddenly felt a bit self-conscious. So it gave me an insight that I could relate to with all the, many thousands of women that I've worked over the years. I don't think anybody wakes up and thinks, oh, look at me. I mean, if you do, great. But I think we all have our moments, right? And certainly when I was in perimenopause, I was having some moments. I was having several moments and thinking, gosh, I've put on weight. I'm not training because I'm not sleeping. I'm just not feeling it. I'm turning up to training like a bucket of lead with an achy hip and just like, God, is this? I remember feeling quite disheartened about it and thinking, am I about to wave the white flag? Which I never in my life have ever thought that. I have spoken with so many women that have been completely knocked by this time of their life, and so they're the ones I definitely want to make sure we get some messaging around all the holistic things that you can do, but also let's celebrate the fact that probably most women, by the time they hit close to that 50 mark, they just don't give a shit what other people think anymore. And that is true. I remember listening to interviews of women when I was 30, listening to women in my age saying, yeah, we just don't give a shit anymore. And I'd be like, but do you really? Come on. And it's true. You get to this age and you don't. You see what is important. You've been around the block a few times. You've made mistakes, you've had the joys, you've had the highs, you've had the lows. Yeah, you're going through this stage in your life, but I really see it as an opportunity to become the CEO of your own life and take the reins and just say to everyone, piss off, I'm taking the reins on my own life. Kids, you can go and look after yourself. Husband, I love you, but this is a really important time for me. Not easy to do when you're working a full job and you've got a mortgage and 3 children and elderly parents and all of the things coming at you. But I just see this as a moment. It's a moment. You're standing right here on that path and you can either go left or you can go right. And it doesn't mean that just because you went left, you can't go back to going right. But this is a real moment for you. And it's really, I think it's powerful.
In the book, you say that you have been monumentally shit at boundaries, quote unquote, earlier in your life. And hearing you talk about caring much less and encouraging other women to become CEO of their own life. Tell me about that and how it's changed things in terms of putting some boundaries in place. And what does that look like in your personal life?
Sure. Well, that's where I've been monumentally shit with boundaries, if I'm completely honest. I've been really good with my boundaries inside of the training because I understand the training and I know what it takes to get it to work. And I used to take all of my training principles and apply them to my business. So I was pretty good at that as well, although I am a people pleaser. I've determined that now with my therapies that I'm doing. I've got a great lady, Dr. Justine Corey, and I actually interviewed her on my podcast. She's amazing. But I still was fairly structured in my business as far as boundaries were concerned. But when it came to my personal life, I didn't. I really wanted to keep everybody happy. And, you know, I wanted to keep myself happy too, but I just found that I was shit at setting boundaries. And that's a thing that comes from your childhood, really. Like there's a thing called schemas. I won't bore you to death with it. You can listen to my podcast and when I interviewed Dr. Corey about it. But you determine these schemas or these statements about who you are and they protect you when you're a kid, but when you're older they don't serve you all that well, but you're trying to kind of unpack them. And I think, and that's why I think at this time of our life, it's almost like, is it a rite of passage? I don't know. We go through a lot in our 30s. Gosh, 30s is a big time in our lives, our 40s, and then we maybe come into our 50s and we're starting to see it in a very different way, which is why, you know, I applaud women at this age time to be doing therapy because it kind of starts to make sense. It really does.
How do you feel as we're sitting here today that you've come in terms of that people-pleasing aspect of yourself and getting better at those quote-unquote shit boundaries that you had in place?
Well, it stems from not feeling good enough or not feeling worthy. So that in order to make yourself good enough or make yourself worthy, then you go above and beyond to make everybody else feel, you know, look at me, I can do this for you, I'm great, look at, But it doesn't serve them particularly because, you know, like the old saying, the more you give, the more they want. And it doesn't serve you either. It leaves everybody feeling quite empty.
I think that candour that you show in the book and the candour that you've always connected with your community with would be something that when you said earlier that for the first time you really felt bad in your body, you struggled with your weight, that will resonate with a lot of women and also men listening, but the fact that for you it's something that's happened later in life, because obviously a lot of us are dealing with that. That's a big story in our life in our teenage years, in our 20s and our 30s. I wanted to ask you about how then you look back at other aspects of the weight loss industry at large. You and I have spoken about this in our previous conversations. You've been very much on the front foot about looking back in eras of how the industry was writ large and your own role on The Biggest Loser. And we've already talked about that. When a moment like that happens and you are then feeling vulnerable in your own body for the first time from a weight perspective, did that change anything, do you think, about how the industry was, your role in the industry? Did you think I understand my clients through a whole new lens? Because you've always acted with great empathy and connection with your clients. I'm certainly not implying that you didn't, by the way. But did it shift anything about your observations about working in the industry and your own experience as a personal trainer?
I think all industries have their flaws and you know, there's good and bad with all industries, not just the health, wellness, fitness industry. What I guess I've always believed in, you know, you do the work, you keep yourself moving, you eat well, for the most part, and you take care of your health and your wellness, and that's just a part of making sure that you're able to do what you need to do, not only for you but also for your family and for even the role that you do in a career. It didn't have an impact on me in throw shame and shade on the industry at all. What it did do was it had me feeling like I kind of let myself down a little bit, even though I was probably running a bit of a racket on myself, I suppose, because even though I wasn't sleeping and I wasn't feeling like, fist pumping to go and do a workout, feeling like a bucket of lead, actually, if I was taking myself off to the gym, managing to even get there. I kind of thought, why is it that something that has been a rock for me, that's been my therapy, if you want for a better term, that I've suddenly let it go? So it had me questioning, some of my beliefs around, my own physical well-being. And again, that I think it was all interplaying. I think it was the sleep deprivation. It was watching my body change. It was not feeling like I wanted to go and do a workout even, and almost watching some of my strength slip away. For anybody, I would never classify myself as an athlete, but any athlete will tell you if they feel like they're losing some of their capacity, it's like, oh, what's happening? Why have I suddenly dropped the ball a bit? So for me, it was probably more of an internal questioning of what was going on. And, I'll be completely honest, once I really got into it and was doing the menopause method, and I had Dr. Kelly Teagle come in as one of the main interviewers, I said to her, could you be my GP? She's like, yeah, of course, we can do telehealth. I'm in Canberra. I'm like, great. I said, I've done enough reading. I think I want to go on hormone replacement therapy. She's like, cool, let's just do all the things that we need to do. So we did. And that really did change things for me, quite quickly too. Suddenly my hip pain was completely and utterly gone. My tinnitus had pretty much gone as well. I was able to sleep better with progesterone that I take at night. So the fog was starting to lift, which meant that I now felt like I wanted to go back and train. So, yeah, there was a few things at play there that once I was able to find some solutions, I could see a bit of a light at the end of the tunnel. If that answers your question?
It definitely does answer my question. And I think, again, it's just because any time that and this could be anything in our life where we feel that's one thing that I've always felt pretty confident in. And then when that starts
when the rug gets pulled out from underneath you.
Whoa. And it can just, I know for anyone that it could be anything, you'll go, oh gosh, I sort of see it through a different lens now. However empathetic I might have been, I'm seeing things a bit differently.
100%. I was like, oh, I'm on the shoes on the other foot, so to speak. And this happens with so many women, depending on what they do for their, living or career. You hear of many women that we're losing from the workforce because they are losing their words. They can't remember things. They're not as fast as they used to be. They're not as quick as they were with being able to find a solution. They're sitting in a boardroom and they're forgetting what they were talking about. Like that's having a massive impact on a lot of ladies in the workforce and even in education, and that's having an impact on our economy. So there's a lot of ladies out there that kind of just need a bit of support. Yeah. And if we can give them that, great.
Well, it's a confidence game, isn't it? Once you start second-guessing yourself, it becomes a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think we've lost many women from the workforce because of this.
Which is a travesty, and I really think this conversation and the work that you're doing and the light that's being shone on this issue will hopefully turn that around. And anyone that feels that they've left the workforce or been shunned from where they stood centre stage in society, whatever walk of life they're from, if they feel that there's been a stigma and a shame and I'm not at the top of my game anymore, hopefully we'll see them returning.
Well, it's interesting you say that because there is good news outside of all the holistic things that you can do, and we can definitely talk about those things. But I've been told that moving into, the space of 60 and plus, that it is quite the decade, and that this is a great time to be employing a CEO in that age bracket, because she has the wisdom, she has the calm, she has the knowledge. She's no longer, the symptoms aren't always going to leave everybody, and they in most instances, some of them will remain. But I understand that, and I was just fascinated by reading some of this stuff, that yes, this is a great age to take on a woman in a high-powered position in a business, a leadership role.
I love this. So anyone listening who's recruiting, they're looking for someone in the executive suite, and they've got some candidates, hopefully, putting their hands up that are women in their 60s.
Yeah.
Your advice would be
if they've got the chops and they've got the rungs on the board, that this is a really empowering time in a woman's life, that would be like a sweet spot for someone in a strong leadership role, which I think I've never heard that.
Do you look to the future yourself professionally and think that you ever see yourself dialing down? Because it's natural to then ask you that question. I mean, you're not available to come and be CEO right now. I think for anyone listening, you're running your own empire. But is that a message that you're internalizing? No, I've got no intention of going away 20, 30 years from now, potentially, unless you decide that you do want to go and play golf.
Or, go and live in Italy, which is, an option. I would like to be able to still offer something to my industry and still offer something to my business, or other people's businesses, for sure. I can't really see myself pulling back completely, but I'm at that place now where I really have started to kind of figure out where my balance is. And again, I'm very clear on my boundaries. So, I will say no, or I'll be very clear in what my expectations are, and when I'm actually quite happy now to say something if I'm not happy about something. Like I've just, probably the last couple of years, I've had some fairly strong conversations around a board table to men who are several years older than me that I would never have normally done. But I've got my arguments and I've got my points, and I'm very polite and I'm very diplomatic. But I know that it's something that they weren't quite prepared to hear. And I'm not rude, but I'm really clear. And that, for me, I walk out of those rooms and I'm shaking. I'm a little like, that was not easy, but God damn it, I feel good for that.
Good on you. And does that get a bit easier? I mean, for somebody that is very adept at building muscle, I would think of this as an emotional, mental muscle that you're building every time you're flexing it a little bit, pushing yourself. It's getting stronger and stronger. Are you feeling?
Yes.
Is it becoming, a little less difficult?
And it's not something that I've been that great at. Even in business, when I think about it, it's so funny. One of my colleagues, she said, "You just feel stronger at the moment, Mish. You've just got this energy." And I said, has it been probably in the last couple of years? And she said, yeah. And I said, well, there's lots of things I've been doing. And, all of the holistic things to look after my health, as well as looking after my mental health. She said, it's your therapist, isn't it? I said, well, I think she's definitely been pushing me and stretching me to consider different ways of looking at things, and to also unpack stuff from my childhood as well. I feel that strength and difference. She said, I can see it. I can see it.
I can see it too. Before we go, I would love to ask, if you don't mind, about dating, because you've been a very, for anyone that isn't following Michelle Bridges on Instagram, get on there, because apart from this wealth of knowledge, you've been documenting the fact that you recently went on your first date.
Well, see, this is another factor to this whole thing, that I'm talking about, is that I never was even ready to do this. Like, I just wasn't I've been in mum mode, book mode, career mode, staff mode, all the modes, just not in the dating mode, like not even close. all of my very beautiful close circle of female friendships have all been cheering me on, including my therapist as well, to do it. So I was like, God damn it. Okay, so I did the app thing, and I've got them all, cheering me on and giving me, all the playbooks on how to do it and where to do it and all of this. And they're all saying, you're going to have war stories, but it's like a badge of honor and it's hilarious. But I just didn't expect it to be on the first date.
No, I know. Well, so for anyone that doesn't know, you go on your first date in more than 5 years and they didn't show up. You got stood up. What the hell?
It was really, I was like, I remember going out and I thought, I'm not spending money on this date. God damn it. I've got, all a wardrobe full of clothes. I'm going to find something. But then I'll buy myself a new pair of earrings. And I was actually at the shop saying to the girls, going on a date tonight. They're like, no way. I said, yeah, it's my first one in 5 years. And they're like, what? And they're like, oh, my God. They're asking me other questions. And they're saying, when I was leaving, come back and tell us what happened. So I go home and I get ready and I wasn't nervous at all. I was like, oh, whatever. It'll just be whatever it's going to be. And in the Uber on the way there, I was realising I was going to be a couple of minutes late, maybe 5 to 10 minutes late in traffic. So I thought, I'll go back on the app and just explain, oh, hey, I'm in an Uber. I'm in traffic. I'm going to be a bit late. When I went back into the app, he disappeared. Like our conversation was gone. His whole profile was gone. It was like he never existed. And then I started gaslighting myself thinking, oh, I've done this wrong. I don't know how to use this app. Have I lost it? Oh, have I pushed the wrong button? And then I'm texting my bestie saying, his profile's disappeared. He's like, oh, he's going to be there. Don't worry about it. So when I turned up, not so much.
So how?
But there is good news.
Yes, share the good news.
Well, so I walked in and there was this guy down the back, and I thought, my eyesight, I'm trying to see, is it him? Is it him? And as I got closer, it wasn't him, but he was eyeballing me, and he said, oh, are you okay? You look lost. And I went, oh no, I'm just here for a date. Oh, it's not the first date. Yes, the first date. And he goes, oh right. And so I stood there for a while, and then he goes, I'm just going to say, if this guy doesn't show, can I buy you a drink and get your number? And I'm like, dude, you're like 37. But you know what? I'm just going to do a lap and see what happens. And I walked back and he's looking at me like this, well, and I said, no, he's not here. He's like, right, sit down. What can I get you? And we just chatted for a while. So, yeah, a bit young though. Young.
Although it's interesting on the apps because a lot of women in their 50s do have guys in their 30s that are really interested in them. I mean, it's really shifted. I think the whole dating scene out there has shifted a lot from when we were in our 30s.
I've never dated. This is the thing. I've got no experience. The last time I think I went on a kind of sort of date, I would have been in my late 20s. So I don't even know what I'm doing.
You don't have anything to compare.
But I kind of think there could be another book in this.
I was going to say, how's it going? Because it sounds like there could definitely be a big installment on this. Like, keep going on this dating journey.
Oh my God, it's so funny. I've had so many people reach out to me, so many magazines reach out. Would you write a column for us? I'm like, oh my God, just threw it out as just a funny incident that happened, and it just went nuts. I had so many people coming in and going, oh my God, I can't believe it. But there's so many women out there that have experienced these kinds of things.
And there's also so many women, I think, that are dating in their 50s and 60s, and it might be for the first time, or it might be for the first time in 20 years, or they might have been dating all along. But just having the visibility and the candor about that conversation, I think, is again so important. It makes everyone feel a little less alone.
Well, I mean, I'm all about having a bit of a laugh, and I'm happy to put myself up for the self-effacing joke if it gets people giggling. It's so funny. One of the news places, when I use that word news very loosely, sort of wrote the headline, humiliated Michelle Bridges. And I was like, I was actually quite empowered by the messaging that I was giving the ladies, and I wasn't humiliated. If anyone should be humiliated, it's the dude who didn't turn up.
Absolutely.
But that's the narrative that we spoke about earlier, that we are still up against, where we try and will put women down. It's like, no, if I was humiliated, do you think I would have put it up on my social media?
No, that's the thing. You didn't look humiliated.
No,
And I love the fact that you also won't let that sort of nonsense silence you.
No.
And you'll keep sharing these stories.
Well, I
in
think I
your
will. I don't know if
journey.
I'm quite cut out for it. I did a second one on the weekend, and that was another, interesting but funny circumstance. But, hey.
But they showed up. So that's
He
progress.
showed up. That was
That's good.
progress.
That's good. I mean, you don't need to share anything beyond that if you don't want. But I think if they've shown up, that's progress. And that's life.
We've got
isn't
a
it?
rung
We
on the
do.
board. We've got a rung on the board.
Baby steps, exactly. It's baby steps. Michelle, there is just so much in this book. I really encourage everyone to listen to it. The Perimenopause Method, the only menopause guide you'll ever need. Thank you so much for your time today. Congratulations on your 18th book, soon to be followed by a 19th book on dating.
Oh my
maybe.
gosh! Look, thank you so much. I just we said it's the only menopause guide you'll ever need. I will be doing edits and re-edits as more information and research comes through over the years, and I just thought I see this as something that can be given from a mum to a daughter. Just can be a little bit of like, here's the handbook on how it all works. And I take women back right to being in utero. So I go through the whole, beginning to this point in time because it's all linked. It's all your story. So yeah, I just feel like it is a little bit of a playbook or a handbook or a survival guide, if you want to look at it like that too.
It definitely is. And I mean, one that you would have loved, I'm sure, to have had handed
Yes.
to you when you were sitting in that car and first grappling with the journey that you're on. But it's definitely there for anyone that's in that part of their journey now. So congratulations again. And you can find out more about Michelle's new book via the link in our show notes. Michelle Bridges, thank you again.
Thank you so much.